And let me say that all of you here, really we're going to include Karama Habli, who I'll introduce in a moment or two, are not IPRA council people. So they all get demerits from me for either not being here or not being here on time. You all, on the other hand, get promotions. We have no idea what either of those words, demerits or promotions, mean, but there it is. Shall we give people another minute or two, one more minute till 5 after, huh? We don't want to be too rigidly Western in our time constraints. At the same time, we don't want those of you who are here on time to have to be penalized for your on-time spirit. And am I right to see, is it true that everyone except for Karama has been on a previous call of this grouping? We have no other new person here, is that right? Excellent, yay. All right, so let's get started. Angelique, you do not seem new to us, but that is good, welcome. All right, so I think we're gonna start with go-arounds, even though we all know each other in some ways, at least briefly. And Hakeem is mainly going to be the one who's going to run this meeting, but I will say as the IPRA Secretary General and as someone who's facilitating 2 meetings today and tomorrow around this time, IPRA General Council is meeting, and I will critique the gently and lovingly critique the council members who are on this committee who are somehow not in attendance here for not being able to make 2 meetings a week. It seems to me a very small thing, but yeah, Hakeem asked me to open it up. Things are moving basically, I think, very well from our perspective within the larger committee and the subcommittees. We'll hear more about that as we go through this hour. But in IPRA as well, things are going quite nicely as we enter this strange period with many people going back to in-person classrooms and such like that. But generally the network seems to be in contact and holding together. And we are growing in excitement about this effort, which though 2 years-ish away, is nonetheless something that I think more and more of our full membership from around the world are beginning to understand as not just the next conference or a new endeavor, but perhaps and likely and hopefully really the space where the future of the field is going to be determined and is going to move forward in a major way. So it's exciting throughout the field, throughout the world. And it's an honor to have each of you in key positions in making that possible. Hakeem, I think that's my introductory remarks. And my name is Matt Meyer, and I'm the Secretary General of the International Peace Research Association. And I was born and raised, and at the moment still live in Brooklyn, New York. Where at the moment it's raining now, but just not flooding, no hurricanes. I mean, we've had some pretty intense times these last weeks, but right now it's just a regular Thursday rain. So that's me.
Thanks, Matt. My network was breaking up here. Did you introduce Karama already?
I didn't, and maybe we can just, I'll introduce Karama, and you can introduce Angelique as our new folk. Yes, Karama Habli is a very special new person here, who we hope will have us with us for a while. But what she is, and I'll just say the title, and then you can introduce yourself in terms of who you are. IPRA was in some ways granted and accepted as part of a global program conducted by this group called IRIX, Community Solutions Program, CSP, where a number of international and some national organizations in the US get fellows from around the world. They have a practicum of 2 intensive months, September and October of this year, this semester. And Karama is from Tunisia, has some tremendous skills in terms of social media and marketing, and will be joining us today to sort of check in about the work we do, but also will be essentially a fellow that will be helping us at least at this foundational stage, and then we can see where it goes from here as 2021 turns into 22, 23, etc. But Karama, please accept our welcome and say a few words introducing yourself in a more personal way.
Thank you for the introduction. I hope that you can hear me well. Okay, great. Hello, everybody. My name is Karama Habli. I am from Tunisia, specifically from north of Africa. And I'm, as Mr. Matt said, I'm from a community solution program, which is a project related to the US Department, run by IREX. And basically they pick one or two global leaders or from a specific country that work on peace, environment, gender, and other social issues, and they match us with amazing organizations from the US, and I was fortunate enough to be with your organization, so I'm very excited for this meeting and getting to know you all and getting to know this conference as well. Thank you for having me.
Karama, welcome. It's really great to have you on board. I was in Tunisia a few years ago and absolutely enjoyed my time there and felt very welcomed. So a warm welcome to you to the committee. I think everyone here has been on a call before except Angelique. The fabulous Angelique, do you mind introducing yourself, please? Angelique has agreed to be one of the co-chairs of the local committee. Angelique, I hand the floor to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Hakeem. I'm sorry, I can't have on video right now. I just moved and I'm in the midst of deep unpacking and organizing space. And the semester has started, so online teaching is here for us. We are online at the University of the West Indies, where I teach at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies. I am also a director of CAISO Sex and Gender Justice, which is a feminist LGBTI civil society organization. I have worked and lived in Trinidad for almost 7 years now. I'm born and raised in the Bahamas. I was a migrant and lived in the US in different places for many years, did my university schooling and work and teaching things. And I've been in Trinidad for some time, which is now home. And I've worked with Attila Springer, my co-conspirator, on many projects, mostly rebel rousing, troublemaking, and protesting. But we've also worked together on a conference. I was, had the great honor and privilege of working for the Caribbean Studies Association conference that was held in Haiti in 2016, which was the first time in its decades of history that it was held in Haiti. And I organized that with Carol Boyce Davies. And Attila was also on the program committee with me, and we did an enormous amount of work together in making that conference happen, which had over 1,000 people in attendance from all over the world. And we really privileged the local space. And so that's why I'm happy to work with Attila and Hakeem. Hakeem was also on the program committee and worked very tirelessly with us in Haiti to make so many things happen. And so we understand the ethics and the challenges of working in different spaces and ensuring that that folks who should be at the center are there, and that we also give back and contribute to the space. And I think that's how I'd want to introduce myself. I do a lot of other things, but I think that's enough for now, and looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Angelica and Attila, either one of you or both of you, do you want to offer very briefly any sort of nascent conversations you have had about the conference, maybe any kind of potential date blocks you've been considering, et cetera, et cetera?
Attila, you want to go?
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'll jump in.
Yeah, morning,
Just doing
everyone.
go-arounds. Attila, please introduce yourself as well, huh?
Okay, morning. My name is Attila Springer. I'm a writer, Juvaist, mass lover, etc. from Trinidad. I'm really pleased to be part of this process and part of this experience. I'm just really looking forward to it. Angelique and I have been having some good conversations so far about who should be involved at a local level. We, of course, we are also deeply embedded in different work. So we work at multiple different levels. So Angelique is being very modest when she introduces herself and says, she does these two things, but she's also involved in multiple ways in different parts of civil society in Trinidad. And so what we've been doing so far is pulling together a list of, like our wish list of all the awesome people who have been doing community, cultural, environmental, sustainability work in Trinidad and Tobago for the past 20 to 30 years that we know, and people who are now emerging as, sort of taking over that work from those of us who have been doing this work for 20 something years. And so, yeah, we have a list of like 30 people, and that includes people like Akila Jaramogi, who runs an extremely successful and important grassroots community reforestation project in the hills surrounding Port of Spain. And she's also a member of the American community. And if you don't know Americans, they were a group of fugitive enslaved Africans who fought on the side of the British during the War of 1812. And as reparations for their fight, they were given land in Trinidad during enslavement. So they actually set up maroon communities in Trinidad as part of their emancipation process. And so Akila is part of that community. We're actually now also organizing a maroon conference in Dominica in November. So we're working on that as well. There's also a Green Screen Environmental Film Festival, which is going on in Trinidad in October as well. I mean, the next couple of months are really hectic. And this is something that I'm also involved in. And Kava Bacchus, who is the chair of and the festival director of Green Screen Environmental Film Festival, he has expressed an interest in being involved. They have lots of young people who are part of their team and network. And so, that's another part of the focus. When Angelique and I spoke, we said that we wanted to have 3 specific sort of focal points for the local energy of the conference. And that would be, one would be climate as a focus. The other would be gender-based violence, because that's something that is a huge issue in our communities. And the other one, Angelique, I'm not remembering, but I think it was just something along the lines of how do we include as many young people as possible in ideas of conflict resolution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right?
Yeah, I
so,
think the other part was that we wanted to make sure, and this is, I'll send a suggestion to the program committee as well. I wasn't able to join the program meeting, but we wanted there to be some focus on economic violence and the intersecting forms of violence. So we know that, you know, we wanted to recognize the ways that issues of climate and, you know, what we generally, you know, describe as gender-based violence, of course, in broad ways, but there's also the economic precarity and uncertainty, especially with the pandemic. But we were already living in times of uncertainty and economic crises upon crises. So I think we wanted, Attila, if I remember correctly, we wanted to make sure that that was also highlighted in how we think about our, you know, our participation, but also in terms of programming. And, you know, inviting people to have reflections on that. And, you know, really, you know, we want the Caribbean space and its complexity to be reflected as much as possible. And, you know, we also talked about that, you know, peace studies is beautiful and not necessarily as the kind of language of peace studies. I don't know if that's as accessible or known, I think, in our regional context. And I think that's why it's important for us to make some of the language more locally and regionally rooted and accessible, right? And I think also that will help us to get the kinds of partnerships and expanding who we want to include locally and regionally, if that makes sense.
I just want to add that culture is a huge part of our daily life. And so we've, you know, just also brainstormed a list of people who we would love to be involved from the Steel Band Association, Trinidad, and all of these steel bands that are in the immediate area of the proposed Hilton, right? So that area is in fact very rich in that, you know, the steel band actually emerged from these communities. And in the period of the post-emancipation era, there was so much activity going on there culturally and creatively that, you know, one of the things that we want to make sure that we do is we properly embed the conference within the creative and cultural reality of the space that it's going to be happening in. So, you know, very, very often we don't see those places as valuable. And in fact, many of them are considered to be hotspots in terms of criminal activity. But constantly we are in a state of saying, you know, we need to center these communities in our conversations about what Trinidad and Tobago has and how we share it with the world, right? And then of course, Tobago has to be involved as well. And so I've been reaching out to a couple of people who I know within the Tobago Festivals Committee and the Tobago House of Assembly, which is in a bit of bacchanal right now, but hopefully they will sort out their business in the next, in the coming months. So it would be a little bit more clear who exactly we have to liaise with. The other thing which is really important is for us to make contact with the ministries, the various government bodies. So it's the Ministry of Education, which is really important. Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts is also a really important ministry to have on board. The Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, and finally, the Ministry of National Security, because if we have people coming in from multiple countries, we just want to make sure that we clear everybody's visa requirements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, so those are the kinds of things that we've been looking at. We've also been looking at the calendar in terms of what else is usually happening in Trinidad and Tobago around that time. So anytime between April, from the end of March, I mean, Carnival is happening and nothing else can happen in the world in Trinidad when Carnival is happening, just barely. But then you have like, after Carnival, you have Pagwa, which is a Hindu holy festival of spring. Right after that, you have Easter. Right after that, you have Jazz Festival in Tobago, as well as Boca Slit Festival, which will all be competing for energy and oxygen in the space. And so, Angelique, what were the dates that we had come up with again?
I think we had
just to avoid, I think you said like early May or something like that.
Yeah, we were saying, yeah, exactly. We were saying sometime earlier, even mid-May, but then Hakeem and I were talking about the fact that we're not sure when CSA is happening in 2023. So we want to be careful that we don't bounce that up too closely, although it's usually the first week of June. So we should be okay. Yeah. So even if we had it later in May, the only consideration too was thinking about when, folks are kind of wrapping up, for people who teach, who are wrapping up their semesters. But, generally people kind of wrap up, at least we do in the UE system, by the end of April, early May. So that's usually okay but I know some universities might go a little bit later. So I guess we wanted to hear from you all what dates worked. We think that's the best. And if you hit in June is really rainy season, unpredictable, hurricanes. Yeah. So that,
I mean, like mid-June, I think is our cutoff point. Mid-May, sorry. Mid-May is our cutoff point to do something. I mean, yeah, that would be the best option.
Yeah, definitely no later than the end of May. And and we had asked, I'm not sure if we got this from you all, but we had asked for a kind of skeleton of what you've done in the past, so we could get a sense, is this a 5-day conference? Is this a 4-day conference? Is it okay to have it over the weekend? Some models there's some big conferences have it, over a weekend. It's like a Friday to a Tuesday. Some CSA has historically done the kind of Monday to Friday, even into Saturday. It's a full 5-day conference. So we wanted to kind of know the expectations, as well as, what are the expectations? Do you want an event every single evening? I mean, obviously that's a lot to manage in terms of transport and organizing. And yeah, so we kind of wanted to know, what are the expectations of the association and how it's been done in the past? How much flexibility do we have? If you usually have it during the week, can we switch it to the weekend? How many days are we looking at? I know, of course, it depends on how many submissions you get. And Hakim said that it varies from place to place. Sometimes you could have a small conference, and sometimes you can have a very large conference. So I know we'll have to, we need to at least work with a sense of how many days.
Let me address that briefly. And then give the reins back to Hakeem and a more open discussion. But there are, I think, two pertinent points to say by way of information from the Latin American Regional Association of IPRA. We have 5 regional associations, and both the Latin American and the North American regional associations are going to be heavily involved in supporting this in any number of ways. And the interesting news from our Latin American Association, they had been toying with the idea of holding their meeting perhaps a week before, perhaps in Trinidad, so that actually bring all of their members to the conference, and then they'd stay on, which on the one hand is lovely from a international, intercontinental perspective. Perhaps not as lovely from a local logistical perspective. So I have I think, nice news to report, that they decided not to do that. they're going to support and attend the conference in a major, robust way, but they're going to hold their conference in 2023, their regional conference in Chile. So it will not conflict in any way, and we'll make sure the dates don't conflict as well. The other news from them is that they just held their last conference in a virtual format, and this is not typical or usual because our conferences tend to be smaller, considerably smaller, but they had over 3,800 participants. Which, you know, for the field of peace studies and peace research is really extraordinary. So I think the main thing, and this is you know, I open with those pieces of news, but I want to close with an answer to your question. The main point is, and I hope I've made this repeatedly, we need to create the space that we think will be best. And yes, certainly that would include a certain amount of hybrid, although we're hoping that in 2023 we can party and also you know, have our profound thoughts in person. And to me, the profundity and the partying are interconnected in deeply professional and spiritual levels. But certainly, yes, there'll be a part of it that will be virtual, I think, no matter what, because we've come to depend on that. And there are some people who just will not be able to afford a ticket or not be able to afford the time other than to turn on a Zoom. So we'll make that accessibility, like all levels of accessibility, as open and inclusive as possible. That said, we want an in-person conference to be as exciting as we can make it in the frame that we feel best. So there's absolutely no set model that we have to follow that says it's 5 days, Monday through Friday, or it's 4 days, Friday to Monday. We have a complete ability to shape it in terms of number of days and which days, based on what we think will work best. And in my mind, a lot of that wisdom comes from the local, because we don't want to build a top-down, this is what we think, and then, you know, make the local organizers fit it into their, you know, their pieces. If we get a sense from the grassroots as to what might work best, we will fit in the number of submissions, the number of etc. I expect it to be a big conference. I expect there to be a lot of people want to come. We shouldn't plan for something small and tiny. But if we think that 3 days or 4 days is better than 5 days or 6 days, then we make it that. And if we figure that these are the days of the week that would work best, we make it that. So because we have a little time to think creatively about this, I want us to take the time to think creatively about this. And finally, I'll say the number of things that happen in the evening by way of cultural, social activities, I think should be varied and as diverse as we wish them to be. They should not all be things that the local committee, you know, is tasked with building for us. We want 5 concerts for 5 evenings. That's, you know, that's already something different. But I would say, for example, it's always useful to have an evening that's open, that explicitly doesn't have programming, but has a space for people to gather, to get to know one another, and just to get to be together, to dance together, to talk together, to drink, of course, non-alcoholic, or maybe, I don't know. And then there's also often useful, just for fun's sake, for there to be what I would call an open mic space, where there's an evening that could be cultural and multicultural, but not scripted, so that people who come from all over the world could have whatever. I mean, there was a recent conference of our Asia Pacific Regional Association where they informed people in advance that they wanted people to dress in their local national dress. for that evening. And then they essentially forced some of us to get up on stage and give a fashion show. Some of us, I'll say, completely unprepared for quite that type of activity. But there should be that kind of inclusiveness and openness and playfulness, as well as some program conferences, concerts. That certainly, if we don't have at least one steel pan, steel drum conference opening, whatever. I mean, there are certain things that seem like they're a must, but I think in terms of the number and how they're done in terms of creativity, it's an open page, and there are not boxes that we want to have people fill. We want to create the boxes and circles and tents and campfires and all the different modalities we can think of.
This conference that I'm planning in Dominica, which we don't know if it's going to physically happen still. One of the things that we are having is Mbongi, which is Bantu Congo word, which means a place of learning. So at the end of the day, after we've had all the meetings and gatherings and stuff, everybody can just come and you can tell a story, you could sing a song, you could play a drum, you could, weep, whatever feels good for you. And so, I like the idea of having just a space where people feel free to offload some of what they've absorbed that day, so yeah.
I love it. I think we should really proceed with the guiding principle as Matt has laid out for us, that we are open to shape this however we see fit, and I think everyone should be guided by that kind of energy. So before I ask other subcommittees to present very briefly, could we each just go around and just say your name and sort of like where you're based, but very, very briefly. So I'm Hakim Williams, teacher at Gettysburg College, co-chairing this committee with Matt Meyer. Debbie, you can go next, please.
So I am Debbie Ann Chambers. I'm based at UAE, the University of the West Indies, Mona, and I am on the Call for Papers Committee.
Thank you. Kim?
Hi all, I'm in a PhD program at CUNY in New York, but I actually am currently in France.
Thank you. Antonavia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Antonavia. I'm based in Brooklyn, and I'm on the Arts and Culture Committee.
Thank you. Dane?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dane. I'm a doctoral student at Columbia. I'm based in Brooklyn, and I am Youth Engagement Committee.
Thank you. Maria Jose?
Hi everyone, I'm Maria Jose Bermeo. I'm based in Bogota, Colombia. I work for the Universidad de los Andes, but I'm from Ecuador, and I'm also on the Call for Papers Committee.
Thank you. Nikita?
Hi everyone, I am a doctoral student in International Peace, Conflict and Development. I am in Spain, and I'm on the Youth Engagement and Social Media Committee.
Thank you. Amilcar?
Hi, good day. My name is Amilcar Sanatan. I'm a student in Cultural Studies, and I will be working with Dane in the Youth Subcommittee.
Thank you. Wim?
I'm Wim Lavin. I'm based in Northeast Ohio. I don't have my notes with me about which committees I'm on, but I'm happy to be.
Thank you. Polly?
I am living on the homelands of the Sandia Pueblo in New Mexico, and I'm a professor emeritus from Juniata College.
Wonderful, thank you. And I don't think I've missed anyone, right?
And I'm on the Finance Committee.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I have to say, my earlier comments about IPRA Council members, notwithstanding, it's wonderful to have two IPRA Council members, Wim and Polly, with us now. Wim, a member of the executive, and Polly, the chief liaison from Peace and Justice Studies Association in North America to the IPRA Council. So great to have the IPRA Council partially represented, but by two of our leading people.
So the subcommittee that has also done a lot of work during the summer has been the call for papers. And I will have Maria Jose present on that in a bit. Before Maria Jose does that, if the other subcommittee persons can just give like a quick 1 to 2 minute briefing on if you have met or when you plan to meet. So communications, can you give us a quick update, please?
I can speak for communications. Christina and I have met a number of times, and we've essentially just created the framework. So we've set up all of our social media accounts ready to sort of like think about, you know, how we want to create content and when we want to start sharing things. And I've been working on making different website platforms, and then we have sent information or our website templates to people who have accessibility knowledge, and just to let us know which platform might be best to move forward with. And so the next steps are we will be reaching out to each and every one of you for information on bios so that we can start populating the website itself. And then we're drafting, based on previous IPRA websites, the about section and, you know, past conferences. And then hopefully we'll also take input from the larger group on, you know, certain content that will go into the website. And that's it for my part.
Thank you so much. We have purchased a website domain already, which is great. And we do have a logo. I think Matt had showed it at the beginning of the meeting, but some of you may not have seen it. Matt, do you want to show it to everyone again so they can get a good glimpse?
Yeah, it's going to take me a second. So proceed,
Sure.
and I will.
All right, no problem. Next, Dane, for youth engagement.
Yes, we currently, we haven't met as of yet. We are actually scheduled to be meeting tomorrow. Our time schedules just did not marry with each other in previously. So tomorrow we are meeting, and we will update or upload our findings and what, you know, our conclusions onto the drive.
Awesome, thank you. Antonavia. There's the logo, everyone.
It's beautiful. Hi, everyone. So we're also in this beginning stages, I think with basically in the same boat as Dane in terms of arranging time schedules. So I know I think I'm co-chairing with Attila and Rajib. And I know Rajib is in a different time zone. So we're just sort of trying to figure out what the best time zones are. But after listening to Attila today, I'm excited for the next steps of us sort of coming together in the different regions and brainstorming.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah. Sorry.
So we're gonna try for early. I'm gonna try for early next week. Until I don't know if you got a chance to look and see like Rajib's schedule times and see what might work, because they're the opposite end. Think of us. In terms of scheduling. So it's like early in the morning or late at night.
Right. Okay. Okay. I think I would prefer early in the morning.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I will take a look at the schedule and
okay. Sounds good.
Choose.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Okay, great. And we have Casilda on the call. Casilda, hi, welcome. Do you want to briefly introduce yourself, say where you're based?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Casilda. I'm based in Mexico City. And I do work here with youth and, well, different ages in psychology, education, and health, public and private. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. Welcome, Casilda. And Casilda will be working with Dane and Amilcar on the youth engagement. So welcome, Casilda.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next is the sponsorship subcommittee. Will be co-chaired by Matt and myself. We haven't met as yet. On that committee is Tabitha, Wim, Polly, and Unto, and we will be meeting pretty soon. As you can imagine, that's pretty vital work, running around the world, trying to find monies to put on the best possible show, right? So we'll be meeting soon. If anybody's interested in joining that subcommittee, please let Matt or myself know, or Daniel. All right, so I'm going to hand the floor over to Maria Jose to walk us through the draft call for papers, which we're really impressed by the work that Maria Jose's subcommittee has generated thus far.
Great, thank you. So our subcommittee had 2 meetings. The first one was kind of like a broad brainstorming to just gather ideas and see what we wanted to emphasize. And then a second one looking at the structure, the proposed structure. And now we have a draft and we need all of your feedback and input so that we can make that. I was just about to share. If you don't mind, Matt, can I do it over here so that I can move it as I talk?
Okay. I was all ready. You see, I thought it was very clever, but yes, that's fine.
But I appreciate it. It just makes it easier. So that...
I think I have to officially give you the power to do that.
Yes.
Okay. I've done this before, but I don't always remember how to do this.
If it's easier, we can go back to sharing.
Yep, I got it. Okay, I think you can now. Why don't you give it a try?
Great. Super, there. So this is the draft version we have. The emphasis that emerged from our conversations was an interest in thinking forward within peace and justice studies, but doing it with a strong rootedness in the past. And so that's how this idea of rooted futurities came up. And I won't speak directly to the contents, but overall just a sense of trying to grasp the current context and sort of the call to rethink as we move forward, and sort of that idea of rooted futurities, and then situating ourselves in the Caribbean and how important it is to recognize this as a place of coming together, of unity, of syncretism was a concept we were talking about, and sort of appreciating that as our site of coming together, and emphasizing this idea of gathering and coming and looking at Indigenous knowledge, local movement work, youth activism, and intergenerational dialogue, and with this notion of a mix of formats and activities. And so that's our attempt at pulling those ideas together. Again, it would be really wonderful if everyone were able to sort of read through it and look at it, comment on things that emphases that you feel are missing, aspects that perhaps aren't clear, or ideas to add. Any comments are very welcome in terms of that first description. And then the second part that we have is topics for consideration. So we came up with these ones: of renewal of peace theory amid contemporary reconfigurations of conflict and violence, peace building methodology and praxis, transborder solidarities and movement building, climate change, sustainability and traditional ecological knowledge, social solidarity economies and the transformation of precarity, and youth as change leaders. We were attempting to put the topics in a sense of a constructive tone, but as I was listening earlier to Attila, for example, we haven't emphasized around gender-based violence, so it might be interesting for you all to look at that and see if there's a way to incorporate that interest. I also think that an emphasis on the accessibility of the conference will be important to add, which was something else that was coming up just a little while ago. And then the idea, we all agreed in earlier meetings that the conference should have a lot of different modalities, from sort of more traditional panel paper sessions, but also poster sessions, art exhibits, experiential workshops, youth workshops, yoga, dance, movement. I think we could add more around culture. We had art exhibits and installations, but perhaps there's something more that we could add around culture. And then we were trying to figure out how that could take form. And so the idea we have, and it'd be great to get feedback on whether this makes sense to everyone, is that people can submit on two levels. One is as an idea, as a single idea, which could be a research paper or an activity or an art piece that folks want to share, and that they're open to being positioned with others in a panel or other event. And the other one is an arrangement. So it's something that, I've come together with a group of people, or I've designed a workshop, or I've designed an exhibit that has already a clear methodology and that's proposed as a whole. So that's what we have so far. This will go up in the shared website, and the idea is for everyone to have a read and comment. I don't know if other members of the CFP committee would like to add anything to that.
No, I think you explained very well as always, Maria. So I have nothing to add. You did a lot of great work on this.
Maria Jose, Kim had asked, how best is it to offer feedback? Should folks go straight to the Google Doc and put their comments as suggestions? Do you think that's the best way?
I'm going to make a suggestion here.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the Google Doc, if populated by many people, could in fact get very, very complicated. So I would suggest that we send out a PDF of this, which we'll also send out to the entire IPRA Council after their meeting, our meeting tomorrow. And we should have a window for people to give comments in an email to us, to Maria Jose can collect them, or any member of the committee can collect them. And then the committee can look at all of the comments that come in that time frame. Maybe we give it a 2-3 week time frame at most, after which it will be adopted as the official call for papers.
That sounds good to me. The only thing I would shift there is, rather than PDF, a word, so that people can actually get in there and suggest edits or suggest comments if they want to change that, and then we can put that together. In my experience, actually, Google Docs works well for that. But I agree with you. This is a much bigger group, so it might make sense to do the email comments.
The suggestion about PDFs just suggests that you're much more. Sorry, I was just going to say your suggestion about PDFs just shows that you're much more democratic than I am. But yes, I accept your.
So what I was going to say was, in terms of the types of comments, I would emphasize things that are missing or that we want to add, like what should be expanded on, things that aren't clear, or that you're in disagreement with, that you think shouldn't be present, and direct edits, sort of suggestions on phrasing or suggesting on things that we could shift around.
Awesome. So Maria Jose, either today or tomorrow, if we can send that out. And Matt, how long of a window you think we should offer to get feedback?
Polly, Wim, help me here. Do you think if we present this tomorrow, we need to give people more than 3 weeks time? I mean, on the one hand, we're much earlier than for many, many academic conferences. On the other, I'd rather have it out there in the whole world rather than inside our little circles, so we can have a lot of space for creative energy and thinking. So I would say give people a few weeks so that by the end of October we have this.
Yeah, I would think a couple of weeks is enough. Just think from my own experience, if someone gives me a really large window, I tend to push things back to the end of that window. And I think since most people in most countries are back to the academic year, that it might be a good idea to keep it to 2 weeks.
The only advantage I could see of having more than 2 or 3 weeks would be the ability for people to talk about this at the PGSA conference next month. which might actually be a way to generate more response. Aside from that, I think more time would just mean more procrastination and probably less productivity.
I'm going to suggest that we go with the 2 weeks and have people, let's design it for people to talk about it at the PJSA conference, not based on a draft for a CFP, but on a response to a CFP. I mean, the CFP, as we know, is no more than a call. And within that call, there are many ways of interpreting and reacting and relating to it. So I think the conversation at the PJSA conference is a good idea, but we don't have to have that conversation as a draft document. I think the draft can really be worked on internally by this group and by council, and then by PJSA, we can have the CFP on the table to say, hey, look, how are we going to creatively react to and respond to this call?
Awesome. But thank you, Matt, for that. So Maria Jose, when you send, I guess you can just put a clear deadline of 2 weeks and a clear way for folks to channel that information back to you and the subcommittee. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Just a quick question. Should I just reply all to the meeting that to the email that Daniel sent us in terms of getting everyone that's on the committee? Yeah, that's fine.
Yes. Yes, please. Okay, fantastic. Well, that's really wonderful. We were thinking of our next major meeting being either December 2nd or 9th. It's also a Thursday, around this time, 10 a.m. Does anybody have a particular preference for either one of those 2 dates, December 2nd or 9th?
December 2nd is good for me.
Either date should work fine for me.
Likewise, either date.
So maybe let's give us an extra week for the subcommittees to meet and gather. And now we see that for till the 9th is better as well. So let's make it the 9th.
Okay, wonderful. And Kim, I want to answer your question. Yes, I think if you use the same large email to gather everyone's bios to populate the website would be fantastic. Yeah. And we have 5 minutes left. Matt, are there any final things that we want to mention?
I love this group. I love this process. I can't wait to see you all in person. In Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, and then later in other places. But it all will start in Brooklyn. That seems clear to me.
Does anyone have any final comments or a quick question you'd like to pose to the group? I also just want to give a nod. Polly, I saw the document that you sent, and I've processed it and read it over. Really important document. Thank you for that. And more conversations around that are forthcoming.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
Yes.
Maybe to say something to let the whole group know. Well, actually, why don't Paula, you say it? I'll just say this in preference. This is something that's going to be discussed in greater detail tomorrow at the IPRA General Council meeting, and I think the document that Polly sent was sent to all of you already. But Polly, why don't you say a word or two in our last minute?
Well, we started an Indigenous Peoples Working Group based on the really strong support from the last IPRA Conference General meeting. And it's just been our experience for many of us over the years that have been involved with IPRA for 20 years or more that the Indigenous peoples tended to be sort of relegated to a particular strand, Indigenous peoples' rights, where not many Indigenous people were able to afford to come and not many non-Indigenous people evidenced interest. And we just felt like it was important in addressing colonialism that the Indigenous peoples of the land where the conferences are meeting be integrated into the conference, and that overall some of the really exemplary work that Indigenous peacemakers are doing with their communities and with their allies. I thought it was important to be featured throughout whichever arena that they're working in, so that they were integrated into each commission. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you, and to do that in a way that arises out of Indigenous knowledge and not out of Western epistemology. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you to move in that direction.
Thank you, Polly. And just to be clear, on this committee for the 2023 conference, both Polly and another author, co-author of that piece that Polly sent out, Marcela Agadela from Colombia, are both participants. So that's excellent.
And Margot Temez also.
Yeah, is she in this body as well?
Yes, I think she's on the Call for Papers committee.
Yes, indeed. I was also going to mention Margot, so we have three. That's excellent. But I was going to mention Margot because it just came to my attention earlier today that Margot has a brand new book out just in the last week or so. There I put her name and the name of the book, Father Genocide, which has already gotten some spectacular previews and reviews. And it looks like an amazing, important new piece of work. She's from the north, from British Columbia, Canada, a variety of territories. But do check out her book, and we'll deepen the work.
Thank you. I want to remind co-chairs and chairs of subcommittees, after you meet, if you can input just a succinct sense of your notes on the Google Drive, so at any point in time, any committee member can check in and see updates for themselves in the intervening periods until we meet again. Thank you to each of you for coming to the meeting today, for being on time, for contributing. Thank you for the energy that you bring to this work. I am so excited to work with you all, and whether this conference is virtual, in person, or hybrid, it's going to be a rocking time. So thank you all, stay well, and see you all soon.